Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. The opposition in Dominica have announced the boycott of December 6th general elections. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 16th November 2022. Details when we return.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. The opposition Dominica Freedom Party, DFP, has announced it will boycott the December 6th snap election called last week by Dominican Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. This has prompted debate about the fairness of this move, which has been witnessed in some regional states in recent years. While some see it as a tactical political move, others see it as a move by the Dominican Prime Minister to cement himself as a leader for life. Local political commentators have shared their views on the situation. Zane Romulus of the DBS News World reports.
Dominican Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit shocked the nation on November 6 by calling general elections, 3 years after he led the Dominica Labour Party to victory over the United Workers' Party in the 2019 poll. The announcement was even more unexpected given that earlier that day, parts of the country had been devastated by heavy rains. The Dominican Prime Minister's announcement came just over 1 month after the leader of the United Workers' Party, Lennox Linton, resigned from his position, leaving the party without a head. 2 days after Skerrit's announcement, the UWP announced a boycott of the election, calling out the Dominican Prime Minister for reneging on a promise of electoral reform before the next general elections. In 2020, the Dominican government had contracted jurist Sir Dennis Byron to produce a report on electoral reform in the country, which would be incorporated in legislation to be enacted in Dominica's parliament. While some might say the Dominican Prime Minister had a moral duty, says political commentator John Peters, there was no legal duty to follow through on the completion of the exercise before calling an election.
It is whenever you see an advantage, and most likely he saw an advantage in calling election at this particular time. And that is his right. And as any politician who desires to have continuance of governance, he exercised that right, and I don't think we can blame him or ascribe any sort of ill will in that particular decision. So it's in order constitutionally, it's in order according to the law, and it's unfortunate that the opposition decided to not participate. I believe parties should be ready at all times for an election.
The opposition says veteran journalist Earl Bousquet has been caught with their pants down and should not blame the ruling Dominica Labour Party for the position it has found itself. In the last election, the DLP won 18 of the 21 seats in Parliament, with the UWP securing the remaining 3.
Elections, not politics, elections is a competition between political parties for the ultimate objective of getting into office. The UWP in Dominica assessed its chances, and they must have come to the conclusion that we can't win again. And on that basis, in my view, they have said rather than go and make ourselves ashamed, we will boycott. And on what basis are they boycotting? That the voters' list is not clean, and that the courts had asked that some things be done. I can guarantee anyone that the next election in Dominica will not be unfree or unfair by the law, because the opposition, the United Workers' Party, has made it possible from today for me to tell you who is going to win the next election in Dominica on the 6th of December, and it's the Dominica Labour Party. I can tell you how much they're going to win. They'll win all the seats.
The Dominican Prime Minister, who has been at the helm of the country for the past 19 years, has been accused by some of pulling a fast one on the opposition. Veteran journalist Rick Green believes that the people are the ones who suffer when there is not a strong opposition in a democracy.
It's not a matter of right or wrong. It is whether the Constitution permits what is happening in Dominica. We all know very well that there's been a lot of talk about reforming our constitutions, with only talking and no walking. Same applies to St. Lucia. My concern is less about parties getting into office or holding office than the consequences of the people. Because more and more politicians are buying into dictatorships, and the people seem not to be aware that they're creating their own monster. Because as many parties that eventually get into parliament and create a one-party state effectively, so the people suffer.
Early elections have also occurred in the past years in Barbados, Jamaica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in St. Kitts and Nevis, and even here in St. Lucia. However, this move has not always fared well for the incumbent administration. For the DBS News World, I am Zin Romulus.
The police need to do their job. It's the response of Tobago Business Chamber Chairman Martin George after members of the Defence Force joined the TTPS in Tobago to help find the killers of a policeman this past weekend. On TV6's Morning Edition, George criticized the TTPS for what he describes as its inability to properly secure its smallest division. TV6's Renessa Cutting reports.
The point is, they are very comfortable and relaxed. They are not doing the basics of police work. So therefore, do not now try to rely on the army to do for you what you are being paid to do. Because then if that's the case, then dismantle the TTPS and let the army run the show.
A directive from the top cop to have members of the Defence Force join the police on their manhunt for the killers of SRP Lashley is being described as a cop-out by the Tobago Business Chamber chairman.
What I'm saying to the TTPS is, okay, all right, maybe you have felt that Trinidad is, whoa, the horse has bolted. So you figure you can't pull it back. You're trying to tell me you can't pull back Tobago? You can't make Tobago a safe space? 60,000 people in a small space of 116 square miles? If you cannot do that, then you are basically unfit for your job.
SRP Lashley became the island's 10th murder victim on Saturday after he was robbed of his gold chain and shot dead. Incidentally, George is of the view that the police in Tobago are also part of the problem.
I remember some years ago, a strategy was tried and it proved quite effective. I mean, of course, it was a short-term strategy where they changed out quite a lot of the police officers in Tobago and they brought in some from Trinidad who the communities did not know. And as a result, these officers were able to get some effective results because some of the Tobago police officers are too comfortable within the communities because it's either this one is their cousin or their nana and tanty friend or, their sister, boyfriend, girl, that kind of thing. So that type of pumpkin vine networking sometimes works against the effectiveness and efficaciousness of the TTPS.
He's calling on the people of Tobago to take accountability.
They love to rely on the comfort zone to say, well, look, it's always Trinidadians coming across to Tobago and committing the crimes. For zero, the reality is, if one looks at the statistics over the last few years, quite a few of the persons who have been arrested and charged are their own homegrown, homebred criminals. They are young Tobagonians, little good boy Johnny, who is good boy by day, bandit by night. That's what we are seeing.
Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
The government of Guyana has blessed Linseka Inc., a joint venture with CH4 Guyana Inc., to construct the power plant and the natural gas liquids NGL plant at Wales, West Bank, Demerara. HGP's Shemaraline has the details.
President Irvin Ali on Thursday announced that negotiations are expected to commence shortly with Linseka Inc., a joint venture with CH4 Guyana Inc., to construct the power and natural gas liquids NGL plants at Wales, West Bank, Demerara. The president noted that the project would be executed under an engineering, procurement, and construction contract. According to the head of state, Power China International Group Limited ranked second and may be engaged if the government is unable to arrive at an agreement with Linseka. According to the head of state, Power China International Group Limited ranked second and may be engaged if the government is unable to arrive at an agreement with Linseka.
The EPC contract will be supervised by a global supervision firm. The selected supervision firm is Engineers India Limited. The 300 megawatt power plant and NGL plant will be owned by the government of Guyana. Prior to conclusion of the construction, an international firm will be competitively selected to operate the project to international standards and best practice.
In this regard, ExxonMobil Guyana is expected to deliver the completed pipeline to the project plant by the fourth quarter of 2024 to achieve the commissioning and testing of the 300 megawatt power plant by the end of 2024.
Fellow Guyanese, this is a significant movement forward in Guyana not only achieving energy security, but us achieving an important benchmark. That is the reduction in our energy costs so that our manufacturing and industrial development and expansion can take place, and so that the ordinary families and the ordinary people can feel a substantive reduction in the cost of electricity in their pockets and in their household.
The gas-to-energy project will encompass three major aspects. Those are the pipeline to transport the gas to Wales, the natural gas liquids facility that will treat and separate the gas, and the power plant to generate the electricity. Reporting for HGP Nightly News, I am Shamar Allen.
With Guyana's fast-growing economy, the United States Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, has advised the government there to be more inclusive and focus on sustainable economic growth, which will benefit every Guyanese. The details by Joel Vogt of HGP News.
Guyana is one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America and the Caribbean, with sustainable economic development and an economy that is projected to expand by a massive 49.7% this year, according to World Bank's Global Economic Prospects report published early in the year. It is in this regard that the United States Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, during a recent international podcast focused on Guyana's oil rush, encouraged the Ali-led administration to pay attention and include all of its citizens in the current economic activities of the country, which, as a result, will create sustainable development and economic growth for all.
It is an ethnically divided society, and so they will need to focus on inclusion. And there have been many efforts to do so far, but they will need to continue to do that, and at an increased pace.
With the provision of cash grants by the government for the vulnerable populations and those who have been significantly affected by COVID-19, floods, as well as financially challenged, the U.S. ambassador noted that the government should go beyond cash grants, which she opined will not produce long-term growth prospects for the country.
But those short-term grants don't mean long-term sustainability. So we're encouraging them to focus on efforts that will create a sustainable growth for the entire country, no matter ethnicity, no matter race, no matter gender, and no matter geography, because there's a bit of a rural-urban divide here too.
Importantly, Lynch also urged the PPPC's administration to place more emphasis on the interland and indigenous communities so that they too can benefit from the wealth being accrued from the oil and gas sector.
Inclusion is very important. And then, when all this money is coming into the country, there are certainly potentially bad actors looking at possibilities here, as well as the many friendly nations and reputable firms.
Lynch, while underscoring that Guyana faces many challenges with developing the country, particularly with the inclusion of Guyanese across the board, to be part and parcel in this surge of economic activities, more needs to be done in the stamping out of corruption through the legislative process, which must be a high priority agenda of the PPC government. According to a recent World Bank report, Guyana is the only country in Latin America and the Caribbean that is expected to record double-digit growth this year. While St. Lucia, placing second, is expected to see increased growth of 9.6%. Reporting for the HP 90 News, Joel Vogt.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.